Hey guys, Metal Jesus here. Now, really early into my YouTube career, all the way back in 2013, I was doing a lot of game hunting at the time because it was like the height of finding stuff out in the wild and getting really good deals. And the thing I kept finding at these pawn shops and thrift stores were these TV plug-and-plays. I would find these so cheap for just a couple bucks, and they would be sitting next to, old CD players and speakers and controllers and stuff. And so I would just buy them because I thought they were really interesting. I didn't grow up with them. Now, fast forward to a couple weeks ago, and I get a random email from this guy named Milton who tells me that he's been watching my videos for years, and he loved that old video where I talked about the plug-and-plays because he grew up with them. But then he was like, do you know about these game keys as well? It turns out that the company that makes these also created a very select few of game keys that could plug into some of these plug-and-plays and add extra games. And I had no idea what this guy was talking about because I always found these loose. They were never in their original packaging. They're always in a pile of other stuff. And he's like, well, I took 6 months and collected all of them, the entire collection of game keys. Do you want to check them out? The wild thing is that these plug-and-plays often had games that were only made for those devices. They were not available anywhere else. And so I was very curious to check out these game keys and play these games. And so that's what we're going to do today. The first one we're going to check out is Spider-Man, and this plug-and-play comes with 5 wildly different games built into it. The crazy thing is, I was shocked to see this, they're actually developed by Digital Eclipse. That developer should sound pretty familiar because they've been around since the mid-90s. I mean, they originally created the Ghost and Goblins port on the Game Boy Color. They also did Lilo and Stitch on the Game Boy Advance. But more recently, they did the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection as well as the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. So they are still going really strong. I should mention that because these things are so old and also designed to be plug and play, they only support composite video out, that yellow cable. So they're very low resolution that I'm capturing and then upscaling to 4K. That's why they look so fuzzy. We're going to check out the games that are built into it. And the first one's called Streets of the City. This is a typical console-style arcade platforming game. The goal here is that you're trying to find 5 bags of cash. You play as Spider-Man and you jump, crawl, and also web swing around this 2D level. Now the controls are really tight, although it did feel like the buttons were a little bit backwards for me for some reason. Not a big deal, I did get used to it, but it's fun enough. The next game I tried was Spider Training. So this almost feels like a gallery shooter, kind of like almost like Point Blank, if you've ever played that on the PlayStation 1 or I guess in the arcades. But here you need to fire your webs at enemies and also try not to shoot the friendlies. Venom's Vindication is a really weird one where you want to shoot your web up and catch Venom's radioactive bombs before they hit the ground, all while trying to fight off these thugs that are coming at you from the left or the right. And then get this one blew me away. So this is called Escape from the Sewers. And as you see by this footage here, it's a full-on roguelike first-person dungeon crawler. The deal here is that the lizard has planted bombs in the sewers underneath New York City, and then you have to go and try to find and defuse them before the time runs out, also while trying to avoid the lizard. And as you can see here, this is really wild. I never expected a first-person roguelike game to be included in here. Thankfully, there is a real-time map on the right to help you navigate because it updates as you go, so you know where you've been and also where potentially the bombs are. This is another odd one. So this is Vulture's Venture, and this one has Spider-Man trapped upside down at a construction site. And then there is a tank that is shooting missiles at the structure to try to knock you down, basically destabilize the structure and make you crash to the ground. It almost plays a little bit like Missile Command. So those are the ones that are included on the device. But then again, you have the game key, which would have been a separate purchase if you wanted to. So I don't know how many of these actually sold, but when you pop this in, well, now you see that it unlocks in a more advanced version of probably the best game that was included on there, which is Streets of the City. The first thing that you notice here is that you have multiple difficulty options, which is nice for little kids or maybe more advanced gamers. But now, instead of bags of cash, it is replaced by radioactive barrels that will explode once you punch them. And now the levels are more complex and more challenging, and frankly also a little bit more interesting. It makes the game feel like a fully fleshed out game that probably would have come out on, like, say, the Game Boy Advance. Moving on to the Namco Plug and Play, this is considered one of the best and probably one of the favorites of a lot of people that own this. And it's easy to see why, because it has some all-time classics on there like Miss Pac-Man. It also has Galaga, Xevious, Mappy, and Pole Position. What's cool about Pole Position is that this controller has the ability to rotate almost like a steering wheel. So that's actually how you control this racing game. And there were 2 key cards that you could get for this. And we're going to start with the black one here. And this adds a game that is kind of a no-brainer. It adds the original Pac-Man to this. So not only do you have Miss Pac-Man, but now you have the original Pac-Man. It also comes with Bosconian, which is a really cool multi-directional shooter where your ship flies in 8 different directions and fires out the front and the back. This feels like a futuristic take on that classic Time Pilot game. It's very unique for the time, and it's still really fun to play today. Also included on this game key is Rally X. So that is a racing game that is actually built on the Pac-Man engine. And this is a great game too. So here you race around this maze, trying to pick up all these flags to try to complete the level. And then you have smoke that you can shoot out of the back of your car to temporarily stop your opponents. Now we're going to pop in the orange game key, and that adds 2 games. The first one being Dig Dug. This is an all-time classic, and it's still really fun to play even today. And then you have New Rally X, which I believe came out a year after the original, and it's basically a modified version of the original. It's got slightly tweaked graphics, and also it's typically considered to be easier to play. I'm lucky that the Seattle area has dozens of thrift stores and pawn shops to dig through and try to find some of these treasures like this. And I'll be honest, I don't always find what I'm looking for locally, and I will go online to do some treasure hunting. That's where an app like Whatnot really helps out. Whatnot is a live stream platform where you can buy, sell, and auction literally anything. I recently found a plug and play I did not own on Whatnot and won the auction. Yes, I do love my video games, but I also collect vinyl records and the occasional Star Wars figure. What's cool is that Whatnot has that and a ton more. And as a special bonus to Metal Jesus viewers, once you download the app using my link, you're going to get $15 from Whatnot to spend anywhere on their app. That $15 credit will be automatically added to your wallet and applied at checkout. But that special deal for Metal Jesus viewers is for a limited time only, so you're going to want to jump on this immediately. So whether you're looking for video games, music, sneakers, toys, jewelry, or more, you're definitely going to want to check out Whatnot, and I want to thank them for sponsoring this video. Next, we're going to check out the Disney Plug and Play. So this is the red Mickey Mouse controller, and all of these games were developed by a company called Hot Gen Games. This comes with 5 built-in games. We're going to check out those really quick, including Donald Duck's Golf Tournament. So this is a very competent overhead golfing game, very similar to a lot of the golf games that you would play at the time, in the arcades and stuff like that. Also, it plays very similar to Hot Shots Golf as far as the mechanics go and how you hit the ball. Obviously, it's not in 3D like those games, but as far as the actual mechanics of the golf, it's very similar. Here is Aladdin and the 5 Gems, which is going to look very familiar to people who have played a version of this on the Super Nintendo, right? Another 2D platforming game where you play as Aladdin and you're cruising around and throwing apples at the enemies. It's a pretty decent version of that, I would say. Here is Simba and the Tree of Trial. So this, as you can see here, is a match game. I didn't think this was anything really to write home about. It's just okay. And then here's another puzzle game where you have to create a path so that the animal doesn't fall into the water. So you're basically given a couple of seconds to create the path really quickly, you know, kind of rotate these tiles, and then they start moving through and you hopefully get it done in time. It was just okay. However, in my opinion, the real jewel here is the Lilo and Stitch game. This is where you control Stitch in a cave that you're looking for photos. Now, the cool feature here is that there's a button that will sling Stitch around the level, allowing you to reach higher and also harder to reach areas. I was really enjoying my time with this. I think this is a decent game. And there were a bunch of game keys released that will work on Disney Plug and Play. So we're going to check out the red one first, and this one adds 3 new games. The first being a fairly decent arcade tennis game. So again, nothing really surprising here, but yeah, it's a tennis game. It plays. It's fun. But then you get this odd matching game here where you slide tiles around from the left and the right to try to make combos. Now, this starts off really easy, but it gets bigger and crazier as it goes along. And then you get another Aladdin-themed dropping gem puzzle match game here, very similar to so many others that were made at the time. I kind of feel like developers, if they didn't know what to make and they had to make something quickly, they would just make this type of game, because you saw it everywhere, on every system. And I don't know. I mean, again, none of them are actually bad. It's just that there were so many of them. It's like, why would you pick this one over others? Then I popped in one of the black game keys, and this is interesting. So it's basically just a variation of the red one with only tennis and that sliding match game included. So I'm not sure why they did that. Seems like that would be fairly confusing for people trying to buy these in stores, because they may already have versions of this, right? So then I plugged in the other black game key, and this one actually does have 2 newer games. So the first one being a Disney Sports bowling game. And yeah, it's a pretty fun little arcade bowling game, although I was definitely, I might have been playing this on easy, but I was doing extremely well right off the bat, which is pretty funny. So I was bowling the best I've ever bowled, both in real life and a video game in this version of it. And then check this out. It's a really interesting take on a Bubble Bobble clone, where you blow a bubble at the bottom, and then it takes on the color of the fish that it goes through. And then you continue to kind of guide it up to the top. It moves on its own, but you're pushing it left and right, hoping to match with this similar color, just like Bubble Bobble. So it's actually a pretty neat idea. I thought this game was pretty cool. I mean, it's just different enough to keep it interesting. Next, we're going to check out the Disney Princess Plug and Play. Now, hey, this is not for me, obviously, right? So, you know, it comes with 9 built-in games, and I kind of breeze through a couple of them to see if there's anything, you know, remotely interesting here, but I found them to be very simple and honestly just not that interesting. So I quickly plugged in the pink game key, which adds 2 more games. This one was kind of interesting. So this is a memory game that takes place on a game board, and you need to remember which ones match, you know, the 2 matches, and that guides your player while you're trying to avoid the witch. I'm not entirely sure how this works. I'm sure I could probably figure it out, but I was like, that's kind of weird. And this was another weird one. So this is kind of like a Frogger game, except you're trying to get from the left to the right-hand side. And what you do is you leap left or right, and you pick up objects that your friend on the other side needs to complete the level. However, you need to avoid getting touched by the enemy. I thought it was kind of interesting, but it wasn't great either. And that's the thing about these plug and plays, is that they used all sorts of developers, both, you know, talented and not, to make these games. So while I, you know, really enjoyed the Spider-Man games, this one here by a different developer, I was like, not really feeling it. Of course, again, it's not really for me either, since it's the Disney Princess Plug and Play. I get it. And speaking of, here's the Dora Explorer plug and play, right? And yeah, as you might expect, again, this is not for me. If anything, actually, these are a little bit more simple than even the Disney Princess one. So not designed for, an adult player like me. It's definitely designed for younger players. So I quickly moved on to the game keys. And these were interesting. So the first of two is a soccer game, which I thought was kind of interesting. Now, I found this to be very simple. I mean, I was able to score really easily. I'm not entirely sure if there's a difficulty setting or if it just ramps up over time, but I could see a very young player probably just learning about football, soccer, they could probably get into this. The third is a platforming game that also has adventure game elements where as you progress, you'll have to choose which of these like star people. And again, I apologize. I've never seen Dora the Explorer before, so maybe that makes sense to you. But anyways, they look like star people to me. And you basically have to choose which one can get you past the obstacle. So for instance, one of them has the ability to create a bubble around you and let you jump higher. This other one here is hot, like the sun, and they can melt blocks of ice. And another one has a shovel, and they can dig out the snow that will then, again, allow you to progress through the level. And yes, this is a simple platforming game, but yeah, I actually kind of like this one. Here's the one I was most excited to check out and see what the extra stuff was included. You see here that he sent it to me brand new in the box and that I could open it, which is cool. However, it turned out to be probably the most disappointing. It comes with a decent amount of built-in Star Wars games, which is great, right? Because if you're a Star Wars fan, Revenge of the Sith was probably the best of those original trilogies. But yeah, they're just all terrible. Basically, each one of these just has poor controls, frustrating gameplay, and just not much fun at all. They try doing different genres and different takes on it, but each one of them is just not very good. But I'm not giving up yet. I'm going to pop in the game key, and that adds 2 more games. This was actually surprisingly fun. It's almost like Missile Command, where you're trying to defend your base while these paratroopers are being dropped from the sky. And essentially what you can do is you can hold the fire button and unleash a powerful attack that allows you to shoot down the ships that are flying over, but you also have to deal with the enemies that are falling to the ground. I actually thought this one was pretty fun. I played it for a while. However, things turn bad again with the Yoda platforming game. The problem with this one is that his lightsaber is just so short, right? In this first level here, you're dealing with platforming and jumping around, but also these stormtroopers, and you have to get right next to them with your lightsaber to even do any damage. It's so annoying. Now, you do have a lightsaber throw, but again, you can't move while you're powering that up, and you also can't hit anything above you. I just found this to be incredibly lame, unfortunately. And again, that really just highlights that it really depends on what developers they got to make these, right? But also too, I assume that maybe gamers at the time, you get what you pay for, right? And then to round out his collection of game keys, he sent these final 2 here that are new in the packaging. Now, he gave me permission to open these, but I was like, dude, there's not many of these listed on eBay, so I kind of feel weird opening these up just to play them for like 10 minutes, so I'm not going to do that. But I wanted to show these in this video because it's cool. You have a volleyball game here. Looks like you got some putt-putt golf. You've also got Sponge Pop, which is probably like a Bubble Bobble clone, and a Snowball Showdown, maybe shooting game there. But that is what's cool about these plug-and-plays, is that the games are all over the place, covering all sorts of genres. You never know what you're going to get. That was the fun part when I was buying these originally. I would go into a thrift store, I'd get the Scooby-Doo one, or, the Star Wars ones, or all these crazy looking ones, and just plug them in, and you never knew what you're going to find. And so I want to thank Milton for sending these over and letting me mess around and make this video. This is a lot of fun. As you guys can tell, I got a huge smile on my face because it's always really cool to check out something weird and interesting when it comes to retro gaming, right? But let me know down in the comments if you owned one of these plug and plays, and did you have any of these game keys? Because I think that they're the most uncommon part of this whole series right here. I never saw them, or at least I don't think I did, when I was actually game hunting at thrift stores, and I certainly never see them anymore. But anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.